The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games. Check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Uwe Rosenberg's new game, Cottage Garden. Then they look back at their review of Orleans in their Dukes Double Take. And finally, they talk about board game tiebreakers. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
This is episode 120, Avant Gardening.
Yes.
So credit for that name goes to Ned Meyer. Wait, no, not Ned Meyer. Credit for that name goes to Blaine Miley. So two things. Number one, if you don't know what we're talking about, over on our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008, all of our awesome listeners over there help name each of these episodes, and Blaine Miley won out at the end of the episode. We're going to talk about all of the runners-up. However, 2 weeks ago, when we had our last episode, which is weird, by the way. It's
very weird.
Weird that we had an off week.
It's been such a long time.
Wow. So not me. I didn't do this. This was our DukeBot 600.
Yes.
Accidentally credited Ned Meyer as the namer of that episode, All My Hexes Live in Texas, our BGG-Con episode.
Yeah.
When it was actually Blaine Miley. So, Blaine, apologies. If you go back to the guild, you'll see that they were both like, I was so confused. I thought that was mine. And then Ned's like, I don't remember offering that. So,
DukeBot 600 runs Windows 95.
Yeah.
Which is probably where a lot of the problems came from.
I remember Windows 95 blew my mind. Because it was like 3.1 and then, or something. And then, yeah, anyway. So we took an off week last week, Alex.
And yet you're still not totally well.
Well, we didn't take it off because I was sick. We took it off for Thanksgiving. That had been the plan.
But you were still sick.
I was super sick. The con crud destroyed me from BGG Con. Just absolutely destroyed me. And you could probably still hear it in my voice. It's in my chest. I feel so much better now than I did like 2 or 3 days ago. But I still am not 100%.
You left game night early on Wednesday. And
I
that
did.
Never happened.
Well, and I skipped game night the previous week.
Yeah.
So that's how sick I was. Yeah, I left like 2.5 hours before I normally would this last Wednesday. So I'm taking it easy here because I'm an old man, Alex.
You are in fact an old man. Yeah.
So yeah. What else is going on? Dutchy business, Alex.
Dutchy business. If you were keeping an eye on your feed, you might have noticed sometime on Friday that a new Patreon interview dropped. Not quite in time for November, though it is technically the November Patreon interview episode. I slacked a little bit. I procrastinated and left it to the end, but I think this is a pretty good one. This is a guy whose name I didn't know prior to BGG-Con, if I'm being honest. Don Eskridge. And I'm sure a lot of folks out there, listeners, do know his name, but
I did.
For folk, yeah, I know you did. For folks who don't, this is the designer of the Resistance and Resistance Avalon, and those are the main games he's focused on. 2 hit games. Sean, one of your top 10 of all time. Absolutely. And he has a new game out on Kickstarter that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But we did a nice long interview, and if you're curious about social games, if you're curious about sort of the process of the designer, where the Resistance came from, how it was developed. A lot of good discussion on that interview episode. Always love doing those. And thanks to, as always, to our wonderful Patreon backers for helping make those possible.
Very cool. All right. Well, hey, since we haven't talked about games in 2 weeks, let's talk about some games.
Yeah, let's talk about some games. So over Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving was here in Santa Fe for me this year. Usually it's in San Francisco or somewhere else. This year in Santa Fe at my folks' house. And we had the entire Goldsmith side, my dad's side, here in town. And I brought a whole bevy of games, including one I still have to return to you, Sean. Ice Cool.
Is it not in your car?
It's in my trunk. Okay. I just forgot to bring it in with me.
Do you have my playmats too?
I have your playmats and Capital Lux.
Okay,
we'll
good.
Talk about later.
Just checking.
Yes, although like all the cards on Capital Lux are now bent, so no, they're not.
And then Alex's car got keyed.
Yeah. You bend my cards, I key your car.
Indeed.
So the surprise hit of this one wasn't Ice Cool. It wasn't Sushi Go or Ticket to Ride, though Ticket to Ride did pretty well. It turned out to be Power Grid of all games.
So weird.
So my brother is a gamer, and my cousin Matthew, not as much of a gamer, more of a video gamer, but got really into this one. We played it the first time, and no one should ever put me in charge of setting up decks
Oh, jeez.
for any games. I screwed up setting up the deck at Power Grid. We played the rules wrong. And when you don't do the deck right in Power Grid, the thing just totally breaks.
Yeah.
But they both liked it well enough, even with that we played a 4-player game on the Europe side. I have a copy of Power Grid Deluxe. I got it in a trade. I'm blanking on...
Wait, you forgot your air quotes for Deluxe.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Deluxe. So we played the Europe side the next time. 4-player, my other cousin, Allie, jumped in the game, and she ended up cleaning our clocks. Allie took it home. But
Nice.
a lot of fun, and that ended up being the surprise hit of our Thanksgiving. Power Grid.
Very cool. So I got to play Arkham Horror, the Living Card Game, the brand new one from Fantasy Flight Games, which I've heard described. So like our buddies over at Rolling Dice and Taking Names, they did a pretty extensive review of this, and it really, really piqued my interest. So basically, it's an LCG with a kind of a role-playing feel to it as well. So you are playing, it's Cthulhu theme, the Lovecraft stories. You're playing these investigators, so just like every other Fantasy Flight Cthulhu game, whether it's Eldritch Horror or the actual Arkham Horror or Elder Sign, whatever, you're playing investigators. And you each have your own deck, and you each kind of specialize in a different type of card. And then there are these location cards, so it's kind of similar to the Lord of the Rings LCG in that way too. And you're trying to collect enough clues to fulfill a certain objective. So you have this objective deck. You also it's called the Act deck. You also have the Agenda deck, which every turn you're putting a counter on it, and eventually it reaches a threshold, and then something bad's going to happen. That's the Forces of Cthulhu or whatever. And then you flip to it tells you what to do. You flip to the next card, and that's going to gain some too. So as you're investigating, you're going to open up new rooms that you can look at and investigate in. There are these monsters that pop up, and the main system as far as these different skill tests, because that's what you kind of have similar in all of the different Fantasy Flight Arkham Horror themed games, is you have a skill. You have your sanity, or not sanity. You have your lore, your intelligence, your might or your fight value, and your agility. And so if I want to fight a monster, I'm going to compare my fight to his fight. So let's say my fight's 4 and his fight's 3. Well, I'm going to beat him and I'm going to do a wound, except that I have to draw from the chaos bag. There are all these chaos tokens. A bunch of them are like -1. Some of them are like -7. And then there's some other ones with symbols that do different things depending on what scenario it is. There's a little scenario cheat sheet. And so you have to pull one of these tiles. Before you do, you can discard cards from hand to kind of help yourself. Your opponents who are in the same location as you can do the same. And then you check the tile. Do you pass the test? Yes. Cool. I deal damage to the monster, or I successfully investigate the room and get a clue, or I perform some other tests. Really cool. Raquel and I just played the intro scenario. We lost big time. We got basically to the end of it, and then the big bad at the end just destroyed us, just absolutely destroyed us. But she really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I think that, so Raquel's not crazy about cooperative games that much, because eventually she just kind of lets people tell her what to do. When it's 2 players, though, I think she likes it a little bit better, because it's just me, she's used to,
she can ignore you.
So anyway, yeah, she liked it enough. I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. I'm very excited to sit down with the decks. I have 2 copies, 2 of the core sets.
Yeah, I saw you buy another one.
Yeah, well, you need that so you can play more players, and also so you can have complete play sets of all the cards. So yeah, I did that, and I'm excited to sit down with the decks and kind of build stuff and really get a feel for the system. It was really good. It really did feel like there was a very strong narrative element. Like when we play Pathfinder Adventure card game, we're kind of creating that more. Don't look at me like that. I know what you're... How dare you? Anyway...
You got to give the backstory on this.
All right.
Or I can give the backstory.
Yeah, you give the... Okay, hold on. Let me just finish this up. So, much stronger narrative hook in Arkham Horror LCG. All right, go ahead, you jerk. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm a jerk
You are, in fact, a jerk. But go on.
All right. So, we had a Dukes of Dice, not really unofficial movie night, I guess, where we went and saw Doctor Strange at a theater here in town. Over on the east side, assigned seating.
Yeah, great. Why don't you provide a Google map, too, while you're at it?
Nice. I might. Yeah, it's off of Central, near Tramway, very far east side of town. Reserved seats and unlimited refills on popcorn.
Excellent.
Not too bad. But before that, I had about an hour and a half or so to kill and went over to Matthew's, and Matthew said, hey, I'd really like to... I've played it on the app, but I don't know what I'm doing. Can you teach me Pathfinder? And so we broke out Wrath of the Righteous, and I ran him through the first as a one-shot campaign, Sean. A one-shot.
Mm-hmm.
Decks weren't maintained. They're broken down.
Mm-hmm.
Sean feels like a Duke scorned.
I have wanted to play this so many times with other people. I've been asked by other people, and I'm like, no. That's mine and Alex's thing. That's
okay.
fine. That's fine.
I just taught him. It's not a campaign.
Oh, yeah. I was just teaching him. He needed to learn the ways of Pathfinder, and I happened to be there. So next thing you knew, we were there at the table, our hands brushing each other's as we were drawing from the encounter decks.
It wasn't me.
What?
Anyway, it's the Shaggy song.
Oh.
So not family. It's a family.
Okay.
Anyway.
Why don't you talk about some other games where you're not cheating on me?
Yeah, sorry. Got in a couple. I think you may have left by the point we played both of these, actually. Both Friedman Freeze games. Fuji Flush, which you've played before. We played with 8 players. For folks who don't know, this is kind of a filler one. You're playing cards, trying to team up with other players to beat cards on the table, wipe out other cards, and empty out your hand. That's the quick summary of it. This was a riot at 8.
Yeah, I've only played it 3 or 4, so I'm curious how 8 was.
Oh, it's awesome. Because there's more possibilities to team up. There's more action as far as that goes. And it just gets, team 3, team 3, team 3, and just, and I mean, that kind of like a table moment. It's fast enough that I would easily, it's a filler.
Yeah.
But it worked really well. It's a Friedman Freeze filler.
Yeah.
Fuji Flush.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It worked out really well at that player count. I would actually prefer it at that player count, 7 or 8.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, really fun. Separately, we also played a couple rounds of Fabled Fruit.
So not at the same time?
Not at the exact same time. I was
separately.
Not working 2 tables.
Okay, separately.
Yes.
Good.
So Fabled Fruit, for folks who don't know, it's kind of a legacy game is the closest way to put it, but it's not a disposable legacy game. He calls it a fable game. You're a bunch of animals trying to make delicious daiquiris.
As one does.
That's the premise of it.
That old chestnut.
Yeah. There are fruit cards that you're going to acquire in various ways by moving your animal around to different spaces. But what becomes different is every time you pay for a card to buy a daiquiri, another card comes out, and it creates more possibilities for you to go to over time. And some cards the pool of 4 of them will go away. New things will be added. So, for instance, during our game, we added a market. There are, I think, 50 or 60 different buildings of 4 each. And the idea is you keep playing games until you get to the end of it. As new mechanisms get added, some get removed. It's a really interesting concept. And I think a lot of people at the table thought, interesting concept, not sure about execution. I'm not sure I'm even so willing to go on the not good on execution. I'd like to see it play out a little bit more. But this is one of those where you're meant to play a bunch of times and see how it evolves and gets more interesting. We'll see. It's one I'm very, very intrigued by because it's meant to be a legacy game that you can easily reset and kind of go back to. So I thought it was a really cool concept from Friedman Freeze.
Okay.
But he tends to have those really cool concepts that sometimes the execution is fantastic, sometimes the execution is less so. 504 is the one that comes to mind for a lot of gamers. So, yeah, I'll be curious to play a little bit more of this one and feel it out and see where my head's at. I'm curious for you to try it because I think you'd, at least conceptually, find it interesting. I don't know if you'd like it, though.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to try it.
So that's Fabled Fruit and Fuji Flush.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about Great Western Trail from Stronghold Games and from one of our favorite designers, Alexander Pfister, who's on fire, spelled with a PH. Great Western Trail, you are a cattle rustler or herder? Cattle herder?
It depends on what you're doing.
I don't know.
If you're rustling, then I think you're stealing them.
You're not rustling. You're a cowpoke, and you're trying to get
cowboy.
Yeah, cowboy too, but cowpoke. I don't know. You're trying to get your herd of cattle from one end of the U.S. to Kansas City, where you're going to sell them off. And along the way, there's this winding path, these multiple paths. And as the game progresses, you're going to be building buildings on these paths that you can stop at and take certain actions to enhance your herd or to get money or to do various things. Now, the key in Kansas City is you want a diversified hand of cattle. You want different colors of cards, basically. So if I have a hand of 4 cards and you start off with a hand of 4, and it's a gray, a white, a black, and a black, I'm going to score money for the first 3. I'm not going to get any for that second black card I have. So you want to kind of control your hand, and there are ways you can do that along the route where you're discarding a certain card and then drawing to replace it. You can take extra actions to draw and discard so that you're really trying to craft the hand so you can get the most money. Now, once you go to Kansas City, you get your money. You then get to deliver it a certain place, and there's this railway, and it has certain distance. So you can go to I don't know what's close to Kansas City, and then there's Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Colorado Springs, and then eventually San Francisco is the farthest, right? So the bigger money or the more money you're getting, the farther you could potentially take them. But then you also are going to have to pay a cost associated with how far they're going versus how far you've kind of built your rail. which is a really cool concept. And there is so much else going on in this game. It's kind of hard for us to talk about all of it in this, what we played segment. We will be doing a review of this. This was actually a review copy from Stephen Bonacore over at Stronghold Games. So we will be doing a full review in the coming weeks. I played once, 2-player with Raquel, and she kicked my butt. She never wins the games, though. Never.
No, ever.
Never. That's what she says all the time. Kicked my butt, and it was good. It was enjoyable. There's a lot to explore in this game. There's so many other things going on that I didn't talk about. There are different types of workers that you get to enhance your actions. There's so much. There's these hazards that you have to cross. You have not played this yet, correct?
I have not.
Okay.
I have gotten fearful after seeing a 4-player game of this last pretty much the entire Dukes of Dice game night.
Yeah, I think that was a corner case. I don't think it should have lasted quite that long.
Okay.
So, but I'm excited to explore this some more. One of the heavier Fister games, kind of similar weight to Mombasa. I think it's probably a little bit easier to teach and easier to play than Mombasa. But so far, I'm liking it, and I'm intrigued, and I'm excited to play some more. So that is Great Western Trail from Stronghold Games and Alexander Pfister.
Last one I'll talk about is Capital Lux, and we got in a couple of rounds of this. Sean, you played this one initially at BGG-Con.
Indeed.
And this was one of the kind of the sleeper hits of Essen.
Right.
It is right up my alley.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely right up my alley. One of those where it's an elegant card game in many ways.
Absolutely.
It's one of those where, and for folks who don't know, you are playing cards to your hometown for possible points later. You're playing cards out to the main board, I guess. I don't know what that's called. The capital. There you go. For actions of different kinds, so 4 different flavors of actions. Before all that, you're drafting cards to set up your hand. Boy, this one is a ton of fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and I will say it's kind of interesting. You need to play 2 rounds, I think, to really understand it. The first round, you understand about midway through, even if the rules explanation is perfect.
Which it was.
It was fine. Yeah, it was spot on. Even with that, to understand kind of how this kind of clicks together, I needed a kind of halfway through the first game is when I got it.
Yeah.
And then the second game, I did really well with it. And we played again at 3 players a little bit later on in the evening.
Okay, good.
So I've gotten this in 3 times now. I think, does it play 2 players?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
I don't know if I'd want to play it at 2 players.
Yeah, it doesn't sound particularly interesting.
No, but 3 or 4, yeah, this is one you should keep an eye out for if you haven't already.
But what's cool is the scoring mechanism is basically, for each of the 4 suits, you compare what your face value is in all of those, and you want the highest, but you also want to be under the threshold of those same suits that are in the capital. So maybe there's 6 points of green in the capital, and you have 7, Alex, but I have 6. So you didn't meet the threshold, so you're out, and you discard those cards, you lose out on those points. Mine stay, and then I also get a bonus points that I'm going to be able to have at the end of the game. So I really like that tension of trying to get high while still stay under that threshold, and you have to manipulate the capital to achieve that threshold, and then but you also want cards in play in front of you for the points. So really fantastic game.
Yeah.
Really good.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I will say, though, it has one of the weirdest component disconnects since Deus.
Oh.
Because it has, on every card that references this, it has a little circular disc that you get as sort of a thing to keep you under. It can also be points at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And the component itself is a square.
Yeah.
They look like little butter pats.
Yeah.
It's weird. Everyone who's played this has noticed and been like, whoa, that's weird.
Makes me wish I had a biscuit.
Okay. Yes, one of the biscuits from, what was the place? The chicken place?
Oh,
Babes.
Oh,
Babes
so
biscuits. Fantastic. All right, that's Capital Lux.
All right, well, last one I'm going to talk about is Broom Service. Wait for it, the card game. Hey, you know what's really weird here? You're all about Friedman Freese this episode. You've talked about 3 games of his. Now I'm talking about 2 Alexander Pfister games.
That's just sometimes how it goes.
That's how it goes. So Broom Service, the card game.
Oh, I didn't even realize I talked about power. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm very Friedman Freese this week.
Come on, Alex.
Sorry, I'm not awake enough. Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about Broom Service, the card game, Alex. So Broom Service, a game that both of us really enjoy. I think you probably enjoy a little bit more than I do.
Yes, absolutely.
But what the card game does is it distills Broom Service with moving your witches on the board and things like that down to the core element of playing cards from hand and declaring to be either a brave witch or a cowardly witch. So at its heart, it's simply a set collection game. You're trying to collect types of potions, different colors of potions, and the more in a particular potion you have, the more points you're going to get. So it's better to have like 3 of one than to have 1 of 3 different ones. You're going to get more points that way. Plus, there's also some objective cards that you can claim if you have certain collections of potions. And all it is there's you select from a hand of, I don't know, it's like 10 cards, a bunch of cards. and you select the 3, I believe, that you're going to use in that round. And so someone plays a card from hand, and it's a brown potion or brown witch, and they say Cowardly Witch. So they automatically get it to the flip side, which is the lesser result. It's only like one potion. And the next person says, oh, well, I'm going to play Brave Brown because they think no one else is going to have it. But then someone else after them says, no, I'm Brave. So the person who played Brave previously discards their card or actually goes back to their hand, and they get nothing. And you do that, and it's just such a cool push your luck component where how many cards do the people after me have? Am I safe to declare Brave? Should I just play it safe and go Cowardly? And it was just cool to see that fun, engaging part of Broom Service distilled into its just simplest form. It doesn't in any way replace Broom Service for me. I like the board element. I like that spatial element and moving about and the different types of collection. But to kind of just get that taste for it, that feel of the Brave Cowardly action, which is just such a cool mechanic, I think this satisfies that. So I think it's really, really excellent, Broom Service. The other thing I want to talk about, Alex, we've got a problem. We've got someone in the duchy, Alex, who doesn't cheat on me, but who destroys my games.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
What isn't me?
No. Well, I don't know. We'll see after I get back Capital Lux and High School.
Yeah.
So Chewy has started getting into games.
Uh-oh.
And we find her, she hides them in her room. We found her with Quicks the other day. That's fine. We found all the dice. There's not much in terms of components. It was fine. So I bought a copy of Las Vegas, the Rudiger Dorn game from Ravensburger. You've played Las Vegas, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, you would love Las Vegas. You would love it. Anyway, so I bought this game over at BGG Con because I'm like, oh, I've been dying to have this game. I always forget I want this. I never pick it up, so I finally picked it up. She got a hold of it. There's all these cards. She bent the cards. She absolutely destroyed Las Vegas. So later today, after I finish the edit, we're building a gate. Like,
okay,
we had a gate before,
yeah,
but she can get through it, and it's no good. So we're building like a wood gate to keep her out of the game room.
That might be a discussion topic for the future. How to save your games from babies.
Oh my goodness.
Or
from monsters.
Monsters.
Board game monsters. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to, that's my tale of horror. Wrong podcast for that, but
all right.
Anyway.
What?
It's a Dice Tower. They do their Tales of Horror.
Oh.
Their Tales of Amazement, Tales of Horror, Tales of Awkwardness, yeah, anyway. Thanks, Chewy. We're destroying Las Vegas. Awesome Rudiger Dorn game. I wasn't mad. I didn't get mad at her or anything. I was very nice. I was just like, it was the quiet.
Congrats on not getting mad at a 2-year-old.
It was the quiet Sean.
Well, you did a very bad thing, Chew.
Oh no, I just kind of disconnected. I'm like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, well,
it's just too dramatic.
I'm not gonna deal with this.
All right, that's what we played. On to the news. First up in news, it's the Smash Up What Were We Thinking expansion. And they just keep coming out with more and more of these really interesting ones, Sean.
Well, you're using really interesting in a kind of a loose way there.
Really? You don't think so?
Well, let's talk about what factions they're introducing.
Yes.
They have grannies.
Nice.
Okay, all right. Explorers.
I'm just thinking like granny robots or like granny ants, and there's just some interesting combos there right off the bat.
Explorers, so maybe think like Tomb Raider and Indiana Jones.
Christopher Columbus?
I don't think that kind of explorer.
Okay.
Teddy bears and rock stars.
Nice.
Sure. I don't know. I feel like I'm probably getting at a point of not being overwhelmed. I still about the last one, the with like the Star Trek, not actually Star Trek, not actually Star Wars.
Right.
But something about that, and I don't know. I don't know. It's getting to a point where you're not going to be able to fully experience, like there's just too many combinations.
Sure.
And that's overwhelming to me.
I get that.
So
that's part of the appeal to me, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to pick this up, but I don't know that I'm going to. I don't know. I think I might be smashed out.
What? Do you know what else? You know what other game has an impossible number of combinations that you seem to really enjoy?
Poker?
Magic the Gathering?
Okay.
Yeah, just saying. All right.
Oh yeah, let's please not compare Magic the Gathering to Smash Up.
Oh, okay. Coming out March of 2017, so keep an eye out for that if that's at all interesting.
What were they thinking?
I think they were thinking of some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
But that's just me. All right. Matryoshka coming out from Terra Nova Games. And this one looks really cool.
Oh, you didn't play it?
I did not play this.
Oh, I thought you played this. Rory and Matthew played it at BGG Con with Justin from Terra Nova Games. And I was supposed to, and for some reason it just didn't work out. So this looks really cool. So they're partnering with White Goblin Games to bring this over from the Netherlands. And so Matryoshka, it's kind of those Russian nesting dolls. And so the art is really cool. It's these beautiful little Russian nesting dolls, and you're trying to collect complete sets of them. And so the sets are scattered, obviously, at the beginning of the game, and you're going to offer up some of your sets, because it's a card game, some of your different dolls for trade, and people are going to secretly offer something in exchange for the trade. And so you pick it, and so you do the exchange, and then you place out what you have of your sets, so people kind of know what you're looking for. But I like the idea that there's the secret trade. So I'm not sure quite how that works, but I think I think it's, you know what people are trading for, you just don't know who's offering what, I think is my understanding of it. And that's a really cool concept. I like that a lot. Interestingly, this was designed by Sergio Halaban, who was the designer of Robin Hood, which is now Sheriff of Nottingham.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting design pedigree. So I'm very excited to try this. This can come out Q1 of 2017. Did play actually at Dukes of Dice Date Night last night, another Terra Nova game, Trick of the Rails, which talked about. Got about 2 games of that in. Really good game. Anyway, so I like what Terra Nova is doing, bringing over some of these games, interesting titles.
I'm a big fan of Far Space Foundry myself.
Yeah.
You less so.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this and Trick of the Rails. But anyway, so...
Okay. Was mentioning Terra Nova Games, but whatever.
Yeah.
All right, finally, our Kickstarter this week is Abandon Planet. As you may have heard off the top of the show, we talked to Don Eskridge, the designer of Resistance Avalon, and this is his game, Abandon Planet. Abandon Planet is a new game about escaping the meteor apocalypse. It's an experience of survival, betrayal, and fragile alliances in the moments before Earth is annihilated. Anyone who doesn't want to die on the soon-to-be burning rock will have to team up with a partner to outfit their janky rocket transport for the interplanetary jump. But everyone's looking out for number one, and alliances can change at any time. Each round, players secretly decide which direction to send their rocket. They reveal their choices simultaneously, and then take turns flying out to the remaining chunks of Earth to pick up what they need or steal it from each other. This would all be safe and pleasant if it weren't for the deadly meteor that will strike at the end of the round, drastically altering the map and damaging any rockets in its path. One player knows in advance where the meteor will hit, but depending on who they choose to share that information with, well, let's just say you learn who your friends are pretty quick in a meteor apocalypse. The idea of this, generally, is it's another one of these games with hidden teams in a certain way, or shifting teams, shifting lines.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the better way of saying it. The one thing you know, though, is you can't win with the player to your left or to your right. So you have to work with people across the table from you.
Right.
That's kind of a key part of that. And what I thought was cool about that, as you might hear in the interview, he talks about how a lot of the benefit of that is when you get couples sitting next to each other, the game makes it so that they have to play against each other. So there isn't this, I have to ally with Raquel because Raquel's sitting across, or because I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight or whatever else.
Yeah, because that totally always enters into it with Raquel and I.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I've played enough, nothing personal with you guys. Just saying. Yeah. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, so Sean, you edited the interview that I did with Don Eskridge.
Did.
You did. And sometime during the edit or right after the edit ended up backing this.
Yeah, it was during the edit.
Okay.
Well, I mean, he's designed one of my absolute favorite games of all time. And the gameplay itself sounds interesting. So I'm like, yeah, I'll back it. It's $35. And I think in the US, it's $7 shipping.
Yep. And so $45,000 is what they were looking for. As of the time of this recording, they're right around $37,000. So still shy of the goal, but likely to make it because they have until December 15th.
Less than 2 weeks by the time this episode drops.
So
week and a half.
Some time still to back it if you're curious. Set collection, social game. It does definitely look interesting. So and with the design pedigree, it's certainly one worth looking at if you like the Resistance Avalon as much as we both do.
Oh yeah.
So that is Abandoned Planet, and that is a look at the news.
Has this ever happened to you?
Oh no, not again! My steel's with my titanium's with my steel, my heat's all over the place, I don't know how much money I have, this is just awful! There are cubes everywhere! How will I ever solve this terrible problem?
Well, don't worry, Alex. There is a better way to play Terraforming Mars. Thanks to the fine folks over at Meeple Realty, you can play Terraforming Mars and stop worrying about knocking your player pieces all over the place. With their new terraforming colony insert, you have your choice of wooden or plexiglass overlays to keep those roving cubes in place. In addition to these vital overlays, the insert has special holders for the hex tiles and other components, plus custom markers for the temperature and oxygen levels. And you can even use their Meeple Realty rover as an enhanced first player marker. The terraforming colony insert plus all their other amazing inserts are available now at MeepleRealty.com.
Meeple Realty, think inside the box. All right, this week we're talking about a game that attempts to make patchwork work in 3 to 4 players. Does it go over well? We'll tell you.
So, yet another Uwe Rosenberg game, Cottage Garden. And yeah, like you said, this is a 3 to 4 player take on patchwork in a sense, although it's not just patchwork, there's a lot more going on here.
Yes.
So every player has their little, their plot of land. In fact, you have two. You have two of these gardens. They are what, 5x5s or 6x6s?
More than 5x5.
I think they're 6x6s.
6x6 sounds closer to being right.
And printed on each of these is a little pot, or a couple different pots, and then a couple different glass covers for the plants. And it's random where they're positioned, so every tile is different. In fact, every tile is double-sided, and there's different amounts on each. So we may have a completely different, or we will have a completely different setup each round. The game's going to last, or each game. The game's going to last 6 rounds, and at the end, we're trying to have amassed the most points. Whenever we complete one of these garden tiles, for every pot on it, we're going to advance one of our 3 orange cubes that's worth points. And then for every glass cover, we're going to advance our blue cubes. Now, what's interesting, the management of these 3 different cubes, the reason there's these 6 total cubes instead of just one point tracker is because you get certain things when each of these cubes pass a certain point or when you bring all 3 cubes into play. You'll get either extra cats. Oh, by the way, there's cats in this game, Alex.
Meow.
I'm not quite sure how they're supposed to be used in a thematic sense. I mean, we have different... Excellent. And then there's also extra pots you can get, which are going to give you more points. So a turn looks like this. You have in the middle of the board a 4x4 grid. What?
Nothing.
Yeah. You have a 4x4 grid, and on each of the spaces, there is a Tetris piece tile, a polyomino, is that the right word? Right? And then around the board in a circle, similar to patchwork, you have the remaining polyominoes in a circle, and you have a wheelbarrow, which is a little 3-dimensional wheelbarrow, which is kind of a marker for the start of the line. Now, a die, which is going to be the round marker, is going to go around the entire circuit of the board. And when it's my turn, I have the pick of all of the Tetris tiles, the polyominoes, in that row. And so I pick the one, I put it on either of my plots, and I'm trying not to cover the already printed on glass covers or pots that are on them. And then when it's completed, and I can use cats to complete it, or I can also take pots as kind of a pass action. When it's completed, then that's when I do the scoring and I get a new tile. So it's a really interesting how you're basically choosing your tiles differently than you would in patchwork. You're doing it based on that board, but you can also, eventually you'll need to refill portions of the board. So when I move my die to the new column and there's maybe 3 empty spots, you automatically refill the board. Or maybe I say, oh, you know what? The next 2 tile pieces in the circle around the board, I really want one of them, but it's not time to refill. So I'm going to pay a cat and do an early refill. Boom, I get the piece that I want.
So are you saying that there's more than one way to use cats in this game?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So there's more than one way to skin a cat?
I don't know if we're skinning these cats.
Well, it seems pretty likely.
But we're doing something with the cats.
I mean, you're trading them for things. Cats are people too, Sean.
So the game's going to go 5 rounds, and at the end of the 5th...
5 rounds or 6 rounds?
The game's going to go 5 rounds, and at the end of the 5th round, you're going to start losing 2 points a turn until you complete your remaining plots. So there is a 6th round, but the 6th round's different because you're losing points. So you don't want to... You want to be ready... You want to be almost out by the end of the 5th round and not play any of the 6th round.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, almost certainly.
For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. So yeah, that's how you play. And in the end, you just add up all the points for all of your different cubes, wherever they are on your board. There's some incentive to jump from the 15-point spot to the 20-point spot because everywhere else it's smaller jumps, and now it's a 5-point jump. But yeah, that's pretty much how you play Cottage Garden. So, Alex, did you have a chance to read the rulebook?
I did at different parts. Not really.
Okay.
Not thoroughly. No.
All right. Well, I did.
Oh, good job. Well, tell us about it, Sean.
It was okay. I mean, it was obviously a translation. There were some interesting things that weren't. There were like strategy was spelled weird, like it wasn't fully translated. Anyway, it wasn't a great rule book. Wasn't a horrible rule book. It was fine. And I guess there's something else I could talk about in art and components. So component wise, there's some errata that was needed, and they provided a sticker sheet.
Oh, you were not happy about this.
A sticker sheet to cover parts in the rulebook, and then the player board or the polyomino board is double-sided. One side is for 4 players. The other side is also for 4 players because whoops, they forgot to print the side for the 2 to 3 players. So on that sticker sheet, it also had stickers to correct the very edges of the board so it would play 2 to 3 players. Now, I keep saying sticker sheet. Well, it's not a sticker sheet. I mean, it is. It's a one solid sticker sheet. I can't just peel these off and apply them. I had to cut them. I had to take a blade and cut them to the perfect size to apply them to the rulebook and to apply them to the board.
Isn't that something you like doing? I mean, no. you clip corners with those little chits for GMT games.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy thing that you do.
Oh, okay.
Like,
but if it's stickers,
yeah. But this is just.
No, I hear you.
This is to correct the game.
Yes.
And it wasn't like, again, this would have been much different if they were the kind of stickers you could just peel off. They were already cut to size. And they didn't quite fit right. Like, I cut them perfectly. And they didn't quite fit right. And I had to, like, trim stuff. And so that was really annoying. So, yeah, this was published over in Europe by White Goblin. Over here, this was edition Spielweise. So, yeah, I'm not thrilled. I mean, I get it. There are problems before it goes to print, and it's better that there's a correction than no correction. I wish they had taken the time to at least have peelable stickers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine. I don't know. It just.
I think that's an understandable frustration.
Yeah.
I remember when we saw this at BGGCon after you'd bought it, you were like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not happy.
Well, fortunately, at BGGCon, we sat down for 3 players. And I'm like, oh man, what are we going to do? Like, we can't cut these out right now. Unfortunately, Eric Summer was walking by. We're like, hey, Eric, come be our 4th player.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, so he came down. So we didn't need it then because we had the 4 players, which is what's standard meant to do. But so the rest of the components, the polyominoes are fine. I mean, I think the thickness of the cardboard is fine. The art, I think, is beautiful. I mean,
gorgeous game.
I mean, it's a bunch of flowers and but I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and then you have that 3D wheelbarrow that works well. Sort of I'm trying to remember what the name of the piece is in Patchwork that kind of moves around.
Is it just a pawn?
Maybe it's just a pawn.
Yeah.
This kind of steps that up to another level. And the fact you have the little pots inside of it, the cats are adorable, which makes it that much sadder when you have to skin them in the game. So. It is a stunning looking game, I think. It looks great on the table.
I think so too. I think that there's certainly an interest when people walk by a table of Patchwork. Oh, that's interesting. Tetris pieces, they're kind of circling around the board,
right.
And you're making a quilt. Oh, that looks interesting. I think this has a much better presence on the board, though, than Patchwork.
Yeah, well, I think because you have that 4x4 thing in the middle.
Right. And I think the art is, because it's a bunch of different, like I said, a bunch of different flowers. There's some other, like there's a well piece. Lots of different pieces that just make it a very visually interesting game to look at, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it's very solid.
No, I think so too. And easy enough to see how things score. I mean, some of the pieces, for instance, come with pots on them. Some of the little 2x2s, or even there's that that little cross piece that has a flower pot on it. So it makes it easy to score, makes it easy to look at, and there's a cool elegance to components here as well. The fact that as part of gameplay, which we'll talk about in a bit, you're flipping over a board when you complete it to get a whole other board there.
Right.
So I think there's 9 boards. You can, in a 4-player game, everyone gets 2, and then there's one extra one that kind of keeps flipping and reflipping. I think that's really well done and feels satisfying to do. Plus, it combines well with that tracker that kind of sticks over the top of it. I think it all worked really well. So I enjoyed that.
So I think I think the point here is there needs to be some comparison to Patchwork, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think you can avoid that. So in terms of the gameplay, how was it similar in your mind, and how was it different than Patchwork?
It is, I think, a fairly different game. I think the experience of the mechanics of it, of filling out this board and trying to do the best you can to fill it out, are similar, but this is a far more forgiving game on that than Patchwork is, because you're effectively doing a lot of mini patchworks. You're not really restarting a game of Patchwork, but you have 2 boards that you can place on, and 2, if you screw up a board, oh well, once you complete it, you can flip it over and do something else, and you have these cats to fill in the gaps. It's less of that competitive, tense game that Patchwork is.
Okay.
Patchwork is very much that head-to-head, who's going to get to this patch first? How can I prevent my opponent from getting this piece that I know they desperately need? Can I beat them to the 7x7? How am I using time? Am I using time effectively? Am I building up a good economy? This is less of that.
More relaxing.
Much more relaxing. And that's fine. It's a very different experience. But and there's a comment on the guild that we'll get to later that mentions this, but if you're expecting Patchwork, it's not totally Patchwork. It has the elements of Patchwork of, hey, here's my selection of pieces. I'm going to put this one and see how it fits best. And so if there's some satisfaction with that tactile nature of it. But in terms of the game itself, it plays very differently. What's nice is, just like in Patchwork, where you can kind of see what the next pieces are coming up, in this you can kind of get a sense of, okay, well, if I pick this one, then I'll have this one in a few turns. You can do a little bit of planning ahead. So there's some elements there. It's definitely a spiritual successor, but it definitely feels different enough to me.
Yeah, I agree. So I was, after my plays at 4 and 3, my first plays at 4 and 3, I was convinced that at 2, I would almost always choose to play Patchwork over this. I hadn't played 2 yet. And I said, but I imagine I'd just rather play Patchwork. And then finally, you and I did play 2-player, and I walked that back a bit. Overall, I think I like Patchwork as a game better, but there are times where at 2 players, I may still opt to play Cottage Garden over Patchwork. Not quite as often. I mean, I think I probably go to Patchwork, I'd say 75% of the time, but just maybe depending on the player. Like if I'm playing with a gamer, I'll probably play Patchwork just because there is that competitive nature to it. With a non-gamer, that more relaxed feeling might be a little bit more inviting.
It's a relaxed feeling, but what's interesting is it's I would argue to some degree has more going on rules-wise.
Yes, I would agree.
And so it's, for a newer gamer, I don't know if it's harder to teach or it's a hard to teach game or it's a super heavy game. But the beauty about Patchwork is in its elegance. Mm-hmm. It has a few very simple rules. Hey, you can do 2 things on your turn. You can move forward and take buttons, or you can take this piece and put it on your board. Hey, whoever's in front, it's their turn. There's not a ton of that, but the depth of that game is where it can be deceptive for folks.
I agree.
Where folks end up with negative scores. And in this one, you're not going to end up with negative scores.
Well, and you have to, also in Patchwork, you have to manage an economy.
Yes.
And so I think that's the big difference between these 2 games is there's no true economy. I mean, maybe it's a slightly cat-based economy in Cottage Garden, but you're only ever having 2 cats at a time. And again, those cats are to fill in extra spaces on your boards and to do an early refill when it's your turn.
And to just cuddle.
Sure. So I think that to me, that's the big thing is that you don't have to worry about that economy. You don't have to worry about, oh man, I don't have enough buttons. Like you do in Patchwork. I don't have enough to get these pieces I want, and I'm just gonna have to take time to get extra buttons, or so to me that's that extra depth that you're talking about, and that extra tension too.
Yes, yeah, but it, as I mentioned, is more forgiving. If you end up with a negative score in Patchwork, you're gonna necessarily feel kind of bad about it. Oh man, all these negatives hit me. This one, first of all, in Patchwork, there's a lot of turns where, other than getting buttons, there's not much you can do.
Right.
Because you can't fit it on your board, or don't want to, or don't have the buttons. This one, there's always going to be something you can do on your turn, even if it's just taking a pot and putting it on your board. But usually one of your selections is something you're going to want to pick to put on one of your boards.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a powerful versus powerless kind of game. And I think for what it's trying to do, a more relaxing feel, I think it succeeds because of that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like with Patchwork, there's a tempo to the game. And understanding that tempo and playing to that tempo will make you a good Patchwork player. Here, this is more of just kind of a stroll through a Cottage Garden.
Which is lovely.
Yeah.
I find it lovely.
But apparently making a quilt is really tense and...
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I gotta...
Well, you're sewing. I mean, you don't want to prick your finger.
Yeah.
There's a lot more tension with sewing in general, I guess, than gardening. Though with gardening, you're talking about life and death. And in the case of the cats, just death. Anyway.
So, is this a thematic game?
For what it's doing, for building a garden and fitting in pieces, kind of. I mean,
okay, yeah. I thought you were gonna be like, oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, super.
No, it's there. I'm not. Again, I don't know what you're doing with the cats.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
they're fertile. I mean, you're you're putting them in the garden to complete.
Yes, to
I don't
fill out
know.
spots.
I don't know. That's weird.
Like it's like you're presenting to the Garden Society in town, and you're like, oh no, there's this one hole in here that doesn't quite work. Quick, get over here, Mittens. Get in the ground.
I just see like just the cat's head just popping out of the ground.
He's just looking around. Oh, that cat flower is gorgeous.
By the way, last night, speaking of cats,
Yes.
we went to Mariah's art show at school, at her high school, right? Because she does photography.
Yeah.
There is.
Let's be honest, Sean.
Yeah.
Any good?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Nice.
There was one painting though that mesmerized me, and I'm gonna. Well, I don't know if can I put a picture of it?
You could put it
Online?
somewhere on Twitter.
Can
yeah.
I?
Check the Dukes of Dice Twitter account.
All right,
Because Sean will put it there.
So I'm going to show this to you, Alex, and then I'll put it up. I'll put it up somewhere. I named. This isn't good radio, Alex, but I'm interested to hear your reaction, and
Okay.
I'll put it up.
What is the paint? So describe it first before you show it to me.
No, I can't do that.
Oh, you have to. Okay.
I'm going to show it to you, and then I'll describe it for the audience.
Okay. Okay. This reminds me of. Oh, I have to send you the link to this.
I have named. This isn't named, but I have named this Queen Elizabeth. So it is a surprised-looking kitty.
Yes.
A kitty head on the body of a human female that's dressed up like Queen Elizabeth with a bunch of, and the picture doesn't do it justice, but there's a bunch of just like flowers around the edge of the board.
Yes.
It is haunting. This picture is haunting. I kept coming back to it. I was almost considering buying this picture. Like, no joke.
Wow.
I find this haunting.
Wait,
and
so you're at a kids' art show and you were going to like offer money for
high
some of the
schoolers,
things.
high schoolers.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry.
So I named it Queen.
So that makes it okay.
Queen Elizabeth. So now when I see you putting cats in Cottage Garden, I just see Queen Elizabeth's head popping out of the dirt.
Or just looking disapprovingly at what you're doing to her subjects.
Well, I don't know.
So there's a game. It's done by, if anyone knows Charlie the Unicorn, it's done by the guy who did Charlie the Unicorn and a bunch of other videos that I'm absolutely obsessed with.
By the way, why are they
Film
called
cow, I said.
why are they called unicorns, not unicorns?
I don't know. Yeah, moving on. He has a game, a web game that I'll have to send to you because if you're mesmerized by that, I think you'd be into this. 7 weeks as a cat monarch.
Okay.
And the game literally consists of you sitting in the throne room and various cats come in and come to you with various problems and you could have it make a good or evil decision.
All right.
And that's the entire game.
I just pick evil.
It's really funny if you do.
Yeah.
Really, really funny. I'll send you the link, and maybe I'll post that on the Dukes of Dice Twitter too.
Okay.
Except I don't have a login, so I'll just send you the link.
I sent you the login.
Like a long time ago, and I don't know what it is.
You're going to have to go look for that.
Yeah,
I'm not
probably.
sending it to you again.
Oh, I'll just send you the link, and maybe you'll do it for me. Anyway, we
Wow.
got on a huge tangent there. Ridiculous tangent. Here's what the Guild had to say about all this. Dave S. says, if you're expecting patchwork, then you're going to have a bad time, okay? The only real similarities are that you select differently shaped tiles to place on a grid. You don't have the economy aspect, buttons in Cottage Garden, but in all honesty, that's okay. The tile selection mechanism is fantastic. I love how your choice is limited based on which column or row, or if you're playing 4-player, just a side note here, diagonal,
Yep.
you have to select from. My wife really enjoyed that you cycle through various gardens throughout the game, each one with a different layout, which adds a bit to the spatial logic complexity. In all honesty, this is a light game, but it is great for us when we want to wind down after a long day at work. We play games during dinner time, and this is the perfect option for that. The fact that 2 more of our friends can play is a bonus. Even though it's a light game, don't let that fool you. The final round is classic Uwe Rosenberg in that you are punished until you finally complete your gardens. And I just made the connection in my mind, and I feel like a dummy. In Patchwork, you lose 2 points for every uncompleted space.
Yeah.
For every turn, you lose 2 points.
Yeah.
During the... Okay, yep.
Huh.
Got it.
So interesting. I don't care if I win Cottage Garden, but oh boy, do I care if I win Patchwork.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I actually want to win both.
Oh, okay.
But Patchwork, I think because it's a dual game by nature of it, you're either first or you're worst.
Yeah.
Whereas Cottage Garden, you could be second or third or a close last.
Yeah.
You don't want to be last in a 4-player game.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's the nature of it. But even in 2 players, you didn't care if you won or lost?
Yeah.
Against me?
Eh.
Really?
Well, and maybe it's just, like I said, I feel like in Patchwork there's that tempo. There is understanding the basic underpinnings of the game.
Right.
And I don't think that's necessarily there in Cottage Garden. Like I feel like in Patchwork I can control the course of the game.
Sure.
And I can make you be reactive to me.
Yes.
And I don't think I can do that even in 2-player in Cottage Garden.
No, I don't. Yeah.
So that's what I mean there.
Very different. I mean, you might be able to see on someone's board, hey, on this one board over here, they desperately need this one piece.
Right,
and I can
right.
draft that piece because I might get a chance to select it ahead of them. But that's not always going to be the situation, and it's actually pretty rare that comes up. certainly in a 3 or 4 player game, there's some of that, but really you're just trying to do the best for yourself as opposed to messing up other people.
Right.
So
that's what I mean, I guess, is that I feel like I have more control in Patchwork. And so because of that, I want to win. Whereas here it's just kind of a fun, not activity. That's not right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to win Cottage Garden, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't feel quite that way. I do want to win this. I agree with you that it doesn't feel as intense as Patchwork feels. Faux show.
Yeah.
All right, Sean, final thoughts on rating.
Yeah, so I think I had planned to give this a 4. So if you don't know, we have a 6-point rating system, a 1.
And apparently we plan our scores in advance.
Well, I'll explain. I'm going to explain. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6, on the other hand, is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And after my first couple plays of this, I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to be a 4. I don't like this nearly as much as Patchwork, and I don't think I'll ever play it at 2 players. I think I'm going to stick with 3 or 4. But after some more plays, it kind of grew on me a little bit, and it's going to wind up at a 5, a very solid 5. A 5 is a great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it, and I think that's true. I will rarely turn down a play of this. The setup is quick enough, and it's a satisfying experience. There are those moments where you can feel clever, where well, I guess that's the difference though. Is you kind of feel clever because you just happen to get the piece that you want. There is some future planning, whereas in Patchwork, I feel very clever because I engineered that I got this piece.
Right.
But still, I like this game quite a bit, and so I think it's a very solid 5. I don't think this would ever reach a 6 when Patchwork is a 6. Could this fall to a 4? Maybe, but I think right now it's a very solid 5.
The production issue probably held it back initially too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that probably sullied the first couple plays of it. I'm like, grumble, grumble, grumble.
Yeah,
grumpy Sean.
Fair enough. For me, I'm right there at a 5. I've been there kind of the whole time.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
It plays at a wide range of player counts. It's easy enough to teach. It's fun, but still competitive, and it just works well. It works well at all player counts. It works well at 2. I do prefer Patchwork at 2, if only because I think Patchwork is an amazing game, and it's my top 10 of all time, and it's a top. It's and by the way, Patchwork, I should say, I think is a more elegant game than this.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of its rules and its implementation. But I like a lot of what this does, and I think there's room in your collection for both of these. I think this is a great lighter one. It's one that I would probably seek to pick up just because I think my dad would really enjoy the spatial components of this and the fact that there's not a lot of take that messing with your neighbor that he doesn't like in games.
Sure.
So I think he would enjoy this one, and so I think as a result of that, it fits at a wide array of player counts, and it's a good amount of fun to play, and I don't think I'd turn down a play of this one, Sean. So it falls solidly in a 5 for me, and I don't think it's moving from there.
All right, very cool. Well, that's going to do it then for the Duke's review of Cottage Garden Double Fives.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, this week in our Dukes Double Take, we are looking back at episode 68, Biohazard Bag Building Buccaneers. Nice. This week, we had reviewed Orleans, the Kennerspiel nominee for that year. One of the Kennerspiel nominees for that year. Sean, you were absolutely in love with this at first sight.
Oh, yeah.
Played this at Dice Tower Con. I did not at the time, but got in many plays of it later. And you were all about this one, Sean.
Yep.
All about it.
Yep.
Gave it a 6.
I sure did.
I gave this one a 5, and I questioned a couple of things in giving it a 5. I enjoyed a lot of what it did, but I questioned replayability issues with it and whether there were dominant strategy. Certain optimal moves that you're going to do a lot of times, every time, certain strategies that just kind of overpower the game.
Sure.
Those are the questions I had for it. I still gave it a 5. I enjoyed it a lot. So where are we sitting on this one now, Sean?
6. Still a 6. I've played this so many times since the review.
Interesting.
So many times. And you could do something for that dominant strategy. You can get rid of buildings at the beginning of the game. Oh, I clipped the corners of the buildings, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Also, it's helped with a nice insert from Meeple Realty. Seriously, it really is, because it's a bear to set up, and the insert's really helpful.
Pledge your fealty to Meeple Realty.
But yeah, no, I've played this so many times since. The replayability it's there for me. I mean, you're experimenting with different things. You're experimenting with different buildings. There's a certain simplicity to the game, which I find really appealing. I think that when our other sponsor, Tasty Minstrel, when the Orleans invasion becomes more widely available, I feel like that's going to add quite a bit. I'm really excited for that. But base game is still a very solid 6 for me.
I still worry about the buildings. And I know what you're talking about removing some of them or whatever else, but that strikes me as patching up a game, actively taking steps to patch up a game that may not necessarily be meant to play that way. Am I wrong? Does it reference doing that in the rulebook?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's in the rules.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Well, never mind. Then I'm just a confused individual.
Indeed.
I have not played this as much since.
I've probably played this 7 or 8 times since.
I may not have played it at all since the review.
Oh, okay.
Maybe once, but I'm not dead positive on that. Maybe once. I think for me, I'm just not as excited about this one.
Oh, man.
It has some simple core mechanics at the base of it. I like a lot of the engine building and what you're doing there, but it's more of a Sean game. It just is.
Okay.
And as a result, I'd like to try it with the expansion. I wouldn't turn down playing it with the expansion, and if it adds enough, it might bring it back up. But for me, it's just a 4.
Okay.
It falls to a good game worth playing, just not all the time, but belongs in the duchy. It's a solid game for sure. It's just not one that I'm necessarily going to be looking at playing all the time. But if it's being set up at the table on, say, a cardboard Friday, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to play it. I just I'm not that excited to get it to the table, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at. Guild had a ton to say about this one, Sean. Ton. Megan Naxer said, while I am super happy to have the nice extra bits, she's referencing Deluxe.
Yes.
The gameplay is what keeps this one hitting the table. This is in my significant other's top 10 games, so we play it pretty regularly, and I absolutely love exploring all the different strategies and approaches to victory. That being said, I totally understand that it's easy to get in a rut strategically, just taking the same buildings and spamming the same character tracks over and over. The game almost felt like it was getting that way when we decided to take the rulebook's advice for the expert variant, where building tiles are drafted out of the game. Tired of the same player grabbing the herb garden and a ton of boatsmen every game? Take that tile out in the draft. Now what do? We also just started experimenting with a slightly different building draft where 3 tiles are revealed, and when you collect a merchant, you may take a face-up building or the top face-down building. It led to some really interesting decisions, and I recommend trying it, especially if you're still waiting on picking up the expansions. Solid game, easy to play, very fun, and full of possibilities and fun variants, and I cannot wait to get anything and everything for this game. 5 out of 6, she's played it 15 times.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty glowing review there from Megan.
Very cool.
Jimmy says, the game can get a bit samey after a few plays, especially the starting moves. It's a solid Euro, but to me, it feels like it's missing that spark that would make it great. The bag building is cool, but the map play left me wanting more. The resources should have some in-game application beyond the round events and endgame scoring, should be able to spend them along with my workers to enhance my actions. Also, setup is a real chore, and I'm not a fan of the cover art. Come at me, Clemens Franz.
So I agree with that part about the application of the different resources. It always just feels weird that they don't do anything. They're just there for endgame scoring.
Yeah, and his point about it feeling samey, that it feels like there's some spark that's missing there. That's how I feel too.
And then thinking about the art of Orleans, it's inspired by the illuminated manuscripts of medieval monks. And so it looks, some people are like, oh, this looks weird, but it's spot on with those illuminated manuscripts.
And I don't know if I talked about this at the time. I think I didn't listen to the full review. I usually just listen to the end for the double takes. I don't remember if I made some sort of comment about it, but I remember thinking like, okay, it's whatever.
What, the art?
Yeah.
Oh, I love the art.
I know you do.
Especially for what it's trying to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and you appreciate the art, I think is it too. Yeah. All right. Chris K says, as you can already tell, I'm going to be one of the few dissenting voices and say I wasn't blown over by Orleans. The setup, as I already mentioned, takes way too long. I also don't care for the randomness of the draw. Finally, maybe it was just my playgroup, but I felt like I was waiting for my turn way too long as other players AP'd. I'll give it another go, as I think I must be missing something.
So, for the most part, you're playing simultaneously, unless there's a reason not to. Like, at a certain point, someone can say, okay, I want to go in turn order, just because what you might do might affect what I'm going to do. So, but for the most part, I thought it was always kind of a quick game. There can be moments of AP, but for the most part, I always thought it's kind of a quick boom, 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 boom.
It can be, but it can get slowed down, depending on your players. Yeah. Scott Sexton says, my thoughts on Orleans, it's a very pretty game, but I'd rather be playing something else, like Hyperborea, which I still want to try, by the way. Have not tried that yet.
I don't think you'd like it.
Okay, fair enough.
I like it, but I still like Orleans better.
I'm glad I own Orleans, but it's one I struggled to bring to the table. When I want a colorful, themeless Euro, there are better options out there. Hansa Teutonica, anyone? When it comes to bag builders, there are more compelling ones, Hyperborea and Automobiles. I'm not ready to sell my deluxe copy yet, but unless the expansions wow me, I think my time with Orleans is coming to an end. P.S. I'm not 100% sold that Orleans is as balanced as it should be. Tiles and certain map strategies seem a bit off. Chris Holmes says, there's a fair amount going on in Orleans, which is the best bag building game that I've played. I like David Short's automobiles, and I liked Hyperborea, but I find Orleans more elegant than either. I hope that the finally available Orleans Invasion expansion will cause Orleans to get more table time, especially the cooperative mode.
Yeah. Automobiles is really good. You haven't played that, right?
I have not.
It's really interesting. You're building, you're racing, right? And you're upgrading your car, and it's really cool. Hyperborea has a bit of an area control element, which is why I don't think you'll like it. But yeah, no, I enjoy all three of those games, but Orleans to me is my go-to of the bag builders.
Fair enough. All right, that's going to do it for our Duke's double take of Orleans. Sean keeps it at a 6. I move from a 5 to a 4. We're going to jump to our discussion topic for the week, gaming tiebreakers. But first, a quick word about our sponsor.
This is expected to be another busy release month for tasty Minstrel games. TMG has 4 great titles expected to hit shelves this month, including Ars Alchemia, an anime-inspired worker placement game, Oracle of Delphi, Stefan Feld's take on the pick-up and deliver mechanic, Ponzi Scheme, a game about trying to perpetrate the greatest fraud on your investors, and the expansion to the smash hit Orleans Invasion. Now, these releases may be subject to change. One can never tell how magical energies, oracular visions, corrupt corporate stooges, or barbarian hordes can affect a release date. But when these games hit, be sure to check them out, because you'll be able to find something out there for every type of gamer.
Check out TMG at playtmg.com. This week, we're not stealing from the Guild for our discussion topic. We're going up with an idea that Sean came up with.
Okay.
Good job, Sean.
Well, I didn't come up with the concept of tiebreakers.
Well, no, but of having the discussion topic on the show.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
giving you credit.
Thank you.
Just take the credit.
All right.
All right. And I think it's worth starting off this discussion topic with a quick poem from Joe Shaw. Roses are red, boatmen are blue. A tie is only ever okay if I thought I was losing to you.
And that was an episode title suggestion, but
Yeah. Oh, was it?
yeah, boatmen are blue.
Oh, well,
for
yeah, okay, that
Orleans.
makes sense. Okay, well, it didn't make the top 6.
And roses,
All right.
roses for Cottage Garden.
Well, it's too long.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
I thought it was just a love poem about ties. Shows you what I know.
Nope.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, so let's talk about tiebreakers, Alex. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about, what are some different ways that games do tiebreakers? What are some crazy ways that games do tiebreakers, good and bad? So like, for example, here's a crazy one. Rattle Battle Grab the Loot from Portal Games. You're supposed to take a pick of the end game condition, send it to Ignacy Trebuchet, and he'll decide the winner for you.
I love it.
I don't know if he's ever. I'm sure that he has to have done that before. I'm sure someone's done that. That's kind of crazy. That on one hand, that's very frustrating to me. On the other hand, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
If he responds fast enough, right?
Speaking of Portal, but now the Portal game itself, based off the video game. At the end of the game, if 2 players are tied, the tied players can appeal their cases to other players and anyone else nearby in 10 words or less. None of the 10 words can include the letter E.
This is the clear winner. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. That's also kind of frustrating to me, but also kind of cool.
Blood Bowl Team Manager, you mentioned, has a few of them, right?
Well, yeah. So there's some actual tiebreakers that it has, but then if you're still tied after the end of the tiebreakers, then those 2 coaches, those 2 players, lose, and then the person with the least fans, the least points, is the winner. Because basically, the idea is that they cheated too much and they're both disqualified.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My favorite is the second tiebreaker in Arboretum. The second tiebreaker in Arboretum is you both plant a tree.
Right.
And then you wait 10 years. At 10 or 15.
5. I think it's 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah.
And then see whose tree is taller.
You're going to forget after 10 years about the game. So 5 is perfect.
But at least you planted trees in the meantime.
Yeah.
You've done some good.
I know. That's the idea there. Yeah. So it's interesting when they have those. But I guess the consensus on the guild, and I think my thought too, is that you want at least 2, maybe 3 tiebreakers. And you want to know that a designer is kind of thinking about those things. Sometimes you don't need tiebreakers when it's like a race or like a first pass to goal, like Catan. You'll never have a tie,
right?
Because someone's going to get 10 points before someone else.
Resistance Avalon is pretty clear. There's no ties there.
Right. So
Baseball Highlights 2045 first mentioned no ties because there's no ties in baseball.
Well, isn't technically overtime?
No, that's
extra,
not
extra innings a tiebreaker of sorts.
Well, sure, but there's no
actual.
Yes. No, you don't win that. There's no ties. The game cannot end in a tie. There's no shared victory in baseball. Players revel in their
Right.
shared victory. And
I know, but you have to break.
I'm not saying that the game doesn't have tiebreakers.
You have to break a tie with extra innings.
Right, but within the game itself,
I'm just
within
saying.
each individual.
You have to break a tie at some point, right?
Well,
With
not
with
necessarily.
extra innings.
Yes,
So therefore, it's a tiebreaker.
but that's also part of the gameplay.
Sure.
You're actually playing more of the game. to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're doing something though. You're doing something to break the tie.
It's a best of 7 series. The game cannot end in a shared victory. That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
Back to you, Sean.
Anyway, so yeah, I think you want to know the designer when there can be a tie, like in baseball highlights. You want to,
Second mention.
you want to make sure the designer's thinking about what are some of those tiebreakers. And I think there's some concern of, well, what is that prioritizing? So like a lot of times it's like who has the most money in certain games, or who has most for a particular resource, or who went first or who went last. And so what is that saying about the value of those things? And so in my mind, when it's money, it's like, oh, all right, well, try, don't just spend stuff to just spend stuff. Try and keep some money, because if a tiebreaker or if a tie is likely, then I might need that as a breaker. Sometimes the going first or going last makes sense. Like going last might make sense if, you have less time to act, like you had less turns than everyone else. And so you still manage to have as many points or whatever, despite that fact. So that seems good. Sometimes though it's first. So like, that could be kind of, or not first, but maybe like the active player.
Well,
Matai would be a perfect example of that, which is kind of an elegant thing. What's interesting, like say Takanoko, the tiebreaker is whoever has the most panda objective cards, the panda eats cards. Do you know why that is?
I don't.
Because in one way, that's almost the easiest ones to get, but in the other way, those are the ones that you get yourself exclusively.
Oh, instead of other people growing or manipulating the board for.
Right. So at the end of the game, I mean, you think about it, you're grabbing objectives for the garden plots or for the bamboo because you're like, oh, well, it's probably already going to be met or close to it. But if you've taken the time to just take those the panda eats cards, then you're being rewarded for that. So I think that's interesting.
And you just mentioned this idea of incentive systems in games. What is the game incentivizing through its tiebreakers? And I think there's nothing more perfect than say, Argent. In fact, Megan Naxer brought this one up. She references Argent as a game that will never result in ties, and as a result, she makes a very big point every time she teaches the game to make a big deal out of the influence track, because the influence track is such a key in breaking ties here. If you recall in that game, I think, because it can be very easy for the same number of folks to complete the same number of objectives in Argent, it needs some sort of a tiebreaker. Influence gets major play in that game.
Oh, yeah.
Major play. But what's cool is it also references whoever got to a certain level on the influence track first wins the tie. First player advantage, so to speak. But she references that as there's a lot of value to teaching someone that, hey, this is going to break ties. This is going to be very important in the inter-objective ties and in the broader game ties.
Right. Pay
attention to this. And I think it's important in a lot of these cases to teach tiebreakers. Right. Not always. I think some games it's immaterial.
And we'll see some comments from the guild, but basically there's a balance of not over teaching too much of a game. Like, cause I mean, so a lot of times what I'll do is at the halfway point or maybe the 3/4 point, I'll say, just so you know, these are the tiebreakers. Up front, I mean, very few people are going to remember those, but some people probably want that information up front anyway. So just kind of knowing your audience and just kind of depends. So yeah, what else does the guild have to say?
Well, so there was some debate over whether a tie is acceptable in a game. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, you have hit on one of my gaming pet peeves. Designers that design tightly contested games but don't include enough tiebreakers. 1, 2, even 3, not enough. Be creative. Don't say players can revel in a shared victory. That's poppycock.
Oh boy.
Take 5 minutes and look at the meaningful resources, decisions, money, moves, etc., and pick 3 or 4 options for tiebreakers. Scott Sexton, responding to that, says, I'm in agreement with you, except that there are some games out there where you run out of things that can reasonably use to break ties. If you take it too far, it devolves into dumb luck, and you might as well toss a die to see who gets the high roll, which is totally cool in a narrative or Ameritrash game. I'm cool with a tie if both players have earned the tie by being on the same footing. So that's Scott's take on all of that. Sean, where do you stand on that debate? Are you okay with ties?
I'm okay at a certain point. If you've gone through enough of them, like if there are like 2 or 3, I feel like if I see 2 tiebreakers, I'm reasonably happy that the designers put enough effort into that thought process than if it's just no tiebreaker or just, shared victory. So I think I'm okay with that. Because, yeah, there is a certain point where it doesn't make sense to make these other things necessarily tiebreakers. And there's not necessarily a way that you're playing the game where you're saying, oh, I need to remember this is the third tiebreaker, so I should take this action instead of this action. A lot of times it just kind of comes down to that dumb luck. So I think there's a balance there. I want enough in there the designers thought about, but sometimes, yeah, maybe there just needs to be a shared victory. So there are some games I would be okay with that eventually.
Oof. You have to get me pretty far to be okay with that. I mean, it has to be a number of tiebreakers for me to be like, all right, well, fair enough. We did the exact same thing. And,
9?
Oh well, I don't know about 9, but and it doesn't have to be that many. But I get frustrated when there's one tiebreaker and then it just goes to, well, I guess you share the victory.
Yeah.
Oh well, I hate that.
So 2? Is 2 enough?
2 is the bare minimum.
Okay.
The bare minimum.
When do you feel happy? 3?
At least 15.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I think 3 is pretty clear. Okay, you've done enough to reasonably break a tie here, and if not, oh well, so be it. But I think 2 would be the bare minimum for me for just about any game where there's obviously no situation in Resistance or Resistance Avalon. Either you win or you lose.
Yeah, it's first past the post.
Bottom line. So yeah, I think at least 2 is where I fall on that one. Chris Schreiber says, I'm fond of having 2 or 3 tiebreakers, and it's okay with me to wait until mid-game to share them with people who are playing for the first time. I say this because I'm fine with staggering some rules so that you can get into the game as soon as possible. Too much, too early is easy to miss. If you mention tiebreakers early, always good to share with new players that the end is coming and what the tiebreakers are as a recap. Since I find pacing is a real challenge on a first play, I really appreciate veteran players who look out for framing where things are for new players. I care more about tiebreakers when a game is longer than 30 to 45 minutes. The tiebreaker that really gets on my nerves is the tiebreaker for Alien Frontiers. The Alien Frontiers tiebreaker gets on my nerves because it just needed a little bit of effort to get fixed. In the game, one of the players may have taken fewer turns than the other players in the game because the game ends immediately when the win condition of colonies on the board is met. If you added, tied player played last in turn order wins the tie, there would be no ties ever because that game feature simply cannot be tied. While it's true that the tied players may have had the same number of turns, if there's a difference there, a full turn seems to count more than an extra fuel token. To me, that's a small but potentially easy fix. Scoring isn't very high in that game, so tiebreaker is a big deal, and since the game lasts 90 or more minutes and expansions added significant in-game scoring, that's a house rule I use.
So it'd be interesting to talk to some designers and some publishers and developers and get a sense for, like, among them, who spends time and effort on deciding tiebreakers.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing there are probably some designers that are just, it's an afterthought to them. And you could sometimes tell that. You can also kind of tell when it is something in the forefront of their mind. I think also the likelihood of a tie. Like in a low scoring game, there's a greater chance for a tie. Whereas in a high scoring game with, a wide range of scores, it's less likely. So maybe you need to think a little bit less. But yeah, I also think that play time also might necessitate the need for a tiebreaker. Yeah, if we tie after 20 minutes, all right.
All right, yeah.
But
we might be inclined to actually just play again.
Yeah, after a 3-hour game, oh man, that can be frustrating.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
So, all right, well that's our thoughts and the Guild's thoughts on tiebreakers in board games. So we just like to see a little bit of effort, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Put in some effort, at least 2, if it's needed. It may not be needed.
All right, excellent.
Before we wrap up, though, here's our naming runner-ups for this episode. This one was a close one, Sean.
Yeah.
Chris Schreiber came with Tetris.
Yeah, a play off of tete-a-tete, face-to-face, which is pretty clever because, the French, using the French phrase kind of signal, Orleans, and then Tetris, obviously, because we're talking about those polyominoes. So I really like Tetris. I think that there was probably an element of an apology to Blaine Miley for...
No.
Don't get me wrong, Avant is very good, but that might have been the extra little thumb on the scale.
Yeah, we didn't schwazi this one.
No.
But it was close, for sure.
Yeah. So, Chris Schreiber, Tetris, very good, I like it.
Steve O'Rourke with Flower Power, the name father.
Yeah.
Back at it again with the white vans. Chris Holm with Spring Sprockets, which I thought was, I always like alliterations. I don't know why.
Because Orleans has the little gears, little sprockets.
Yeah, works out well enough.
This is the time on Sprockets where we dance. Do, 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 do.
What's that from?
Saturday Night Live, Mike Myers.
Oh, okay. Chris K with Chits in Spades. Nice one.
Yeah.
From Ghidorah. He just heard, by the way, a shout out from like
10 episodes
ago, and I was sad about that. I was sad. Way to let me down, Chris. All right, and finally, Scott Sexton. Now, Scott, being a Friendly Shoggoth super fan.
Yeah, an unhealthy obsession.
You get very much. He actually did a whole TMG commercial, the Terraforming Mars commercial we did, but with the friendly Shoggoth involved. Go to the guild if you want to read that. But in honor of that, maybe to incentivize him doing stuff, Scott, if you ever name an episode going forward, I will do the entire naming section in the friendly Shoggoth voice. And if you have a runner-up in the top 6, I'm going to do your name in the friendly Shoggoth voice. But that's about it.
What happens? So if he gets to 5, you have to do the entire episode in the friendly Shoggoth voice.
Oh, jeez. So Scott's naming suggestion for this week is, hello, friends. It's me, the friendly Shoggoth here with cat sack fever. Are you a fan of my tentacles, Sean?
Go away. Go away, friendly Shoggoth.
Okay.
You're drunk. Go home.
I'm going to go have some tea. Oh, I think that's good. All right, and that's going to do it for the episode.
There's now tentacle slime all over your microphone.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
It's really gross.
Yeah, I physically transform into the friendly Shoggoth in order to do that for
It's frightening. I've taken some sanity loss from it.
That's true. Haven't we all, Sean?
Yep.
Haven't we all? Well, good. It's good to be back, Sean.
Yeah, it feels weird. I mean, it's been like, what, 3-4 weeks since we've had an in-studio recording?
Yeah.
And it's BGG and then the week off. So it's good to be back, but that will do it for this episode 120, Avant Gardening. Good job, Blaine Miley. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on December 3rd, 2016. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to dukesofdice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games and Meeple Realty. Check out TMG's awesome titles at playtmg.com. And for high-quality board game inserts, check out meeplerealty.com. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, game on! Hello, friends. It's me, the friendly Shoggoth here, back with some delicious tea. It sounds like you need some honey and lemon, Sean.
We should do a supercut of all of my coughs, because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Not really.
Well, you're going to edit a lot of them out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But then I'll copy and paste them to the end and supercut of Sean coughing.
Yeah.
No.
You need some tea.
I do need some tea.
Would you prefer oolong?
No, I need actually some coffee. Sounds really good.
By the way, my friendly Shoggoth voice is also my Admiral Akbar voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you don't have tickets to Rogue One yet.
No, I don't. I don't buy tickets in advance like that because I don't know exactly when I'm going to see a movie.
I'm going to see Rogue One on opening night. What are you talking about?
I know you are.
I'm a super fan, Alex. Get on my level.
When does it come out?
December 15th.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, tickets are pretty much already...
Yeah, I'll see it like a few days later or something.
Oh, man.
It's not a big deal.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
I'm super excited.
I'm a fan. I'll see it.
Well, you're a tourist.
Hey, look, it takes a lot. I'm a tourist.
You're a tourist.
It takes a lot for me to see something in a theater. So that's a for sure. I'll see it in a theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Star Wars tourist.
I'm not a tourist.
You are.
Though I do enjoy the ride at Star Tours.
Yeah.
At Disney.
Yeah.
I got picked out as the smuggler on one, or the smuggled person on one. Anyway, you have to ride the ride to understand what the heck I'm talking about.
Because you're a scoundrel.
Have you been on that ride ever?
You're a scoundrel.
Have you been on Star Tours?
I have, yeah, years ago.
Oh, okay. The updated one?
No.
Oh, they've updated it, like, significantly.
I've heard. Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you're a scoundrel. That's why they picked you as the smuggler, because you cheated on me in Pathfinder, like a scoundrel.
Oh, we've connected back to there now.
Yep.
At least you can do the divorce paperwork.
That's true.